Hello there. Some of us have had the fortune of experiencing a good feeling life. For the rest of us, we've had more painful experiences than we have had good feeling experiences. And if we fit into this latter category, it's difficult for us to feel positive emotional states. Because of this, it's like they're out of reach. We know we want them, but we don't know how to create them. Here's an example. Say that we, in our childhood, felt unsafe a lot of the time. We have become so acclimatized to the feeling of danger that we have no idea what safety feels like. Or say we've been disappointed over and over again. We may settle into a state of pessimism to the degree that we can no longer feel feeling states like joy. Now, when people tell us, what does joy feel like? Or what makes you feel safe? We have no idea. In fact, we get confused by it. We feel like somebody's told us to go solve one of Einstein's equations when we've never had a science class or math class under our belt. That's because we keep working with what we don't have instead of with what we do have. We have to drop the idea that we have to know what the thing we want to feel actually feels like in order to feel it, whether that's happiness or love or optimism or safety. Instead, we need to find the feeling of the experience that we think might be the closest to that thing that we want to feel. And we need to consider all feeling states that we currently know, whether they be physical or emotional or both. Every single feeling is unique, just like a signature is unique. When you think about the feeling of kissing someone that you have a crush on, that feeling is very specific. It's very unique to that particular experience. And even though we might give that experience a name, ultimately we feel that experience. And that experience feels different than, say, it would feel to hug a friend who is saying goodbye to us. So you understand the uniqueness of these feeling states is what makes them feeling signatures. That's what I personally call these individual feeling states. Right now I want you to close your eyes and imagine eating a lemon in as much detail as possible. If you have had previous experience with lemon, what just happened to your body? You probably felt the reaction to the sourness in the back of your jaw like a sharp cramp. You probably started salivating a bit. Your body reacts as if you are really eating the lemon. But open your eyes. You aren't eating a lemon. You experienced the feeling signature of eating a lemon. That means your body does not know the difference between what you're thinking about and what's really happening. And we can use that exact mechanism to our advantage. Here's an example. When I was 19, I escaped from years of abuse and torture. I had no idea what safety felt like. And when people would ask me, what does it feel like to feel safe, or what makes you feel safe? I would feel not only confused, but also ashamed, because I felt like I should know what safety feels like. I had nowhere to really start. All I knew is that I wanted to feel safe, and I didn't most of the time. So what I did is I asked myself, if I could feel the feeling of safety, what do I think that might feel like? I decided it might feel cozy. So then I asked myself, what in my life have I experienced that's made me feel the most cozy? Because that's the closest that I could get to the feeling of safety. And when I asked myself that question, I got this image of myself sitting down at a table with a bowl of really warm, really creamy and thick soup. That feeling is a feeling signature that I could depend on, that I could relate to. So what I did was to close my eyes and imagine that feeling of the warm soup pouring through my whole body and then extending beyond my body, so that I was not only having this soup feeling inside me, but I was also in a cocoon of it. It was a sensation in my body that made me feel like everything was okay. And so I focused on that anytime I needed to feel safe. That feeling of soup became my resource for feeling safe. From then on, whenever I was triggered, I would imagine that feeling of soup and spread it through my body and out into my auric field like a cocoon. And it worked. 2 years ago, I was working via correspondence with a man who was actually stuck in prison. He'd been in for almost 10 years. And what I was working on with him is the fact that he felt powerless. He felt not free. And honestly, how could you if you were stuck in jail? He wanted to feel free, but he had no idea what freedom felt like. When I asked him to venture a guess at what freedom might feel like, or when he thinks he felt the closest to freedom ever, he told me it was when he was riding his motorbike across the country. When I asked him to imagine that feeling as if he was doing it right now, he could feel that feeling of expansiveness and being without burden, and the feeling of being untouchable or invincible. He could feel that in his body. He had found the feeling signature. I told him to spread that feeling throughout his body as if that feeling itself was a substance. For him, that feeling was his resource for feeling free. Even though he was not currently on a motorbike, he was in jail. When he imagined that feeling, his body did not know the difference. It responded accordingly. From then on, anytime he felt powerless to a security guard or another inmate, or anytime he felt stuck and imprisoned, he would conjure up that feeling of being on his motorbike and spread it through his whole body. Because of this, he was much less combative and ended up getting his sentence reduced significantly. Long story short, we need to work with the resources and experiences that we do have when we're trying to get to a feeling state that we have no experience with. And I want to mention that we don't have to have experienced these feeling states in our actual 3D reality. For example, in my 3-dimensional life, I may never have actually pet a unicorn. But to me, that imagined experience of petting a unicorn is the closest thing that I have to joy. Or, for example, I may never in my 3D reality have floated through space. But the idea of floating through space makes me feel the most stress-free. So we can work not only with things we've actually experienced, but things that we've imagined experiencing in our 3D life that come the closest to the feeling states which we want to experience. As it applies to your own life, ask yourself, what feeling experience is it that you want to have? Is it love or abundance or friendship or self-esteem? Your imagination is literally the limit because there is no way to do this wrong. What do you imagine that feeling state you want to experience might feel like? When do you remember feeling the closest to that feeling? Or what experience or circumstance do you imagine might feel the closest to that feeling? Imagine that experience or that circumstance in as much detail as you possibly can. Make it as real to yourself as you possibly can, to the degree that you have captured that feeling signature. Even if you can't describe it, you want to be able to feel that feeling signature. And once you do that, I want you to focus on spreading that feeling signature through your whole body and then out through your auric field. So you're not only in a cocoon of it, but it's also in you. So it's both in and of and outside of you. You want to swim in this vibration. Spend as much time in this feeling signature as you need to. Eventually you won't need to even close your eyes to conjure up this feeling signature within you. You can do it whenever you want to, just by thinking it. In a universe that essentially functions as a mirror hologram, there's an added benefit to doing this particular exercise. It's that any feeling state which I maintain is reflected in my external reality. That means the more that I conjure up that feeling of coziness within my body, the more my external reality starts to mirror circumstances that make me feel cozy. And the cozier I feel, the safer I feel. And the safer I feel, the more that safety, or things that feel like safety, mirror in my external reality until I finally know what safety feels like, and I finally know what safety is. You may not know what friendship feels like, but you may know the feeling of having a cat curl up on your lap. You may not know what trust feels like, but you may know what it feels like to imagine being held by Jesus and to know that he will always have your best interest at heart. You may not know what joy feels like, but you may know what it feels like to lay in the grass at sunset listening to crickets. You may not know what confidence feels like, but you may know what it feels like to get to experience a victory on your favorite video game. It's an empowering thing to discover that we are not at the mercy of how we currently feel in our life. It's also an empowering thing to know that we don't have to know what happiness feels like to find our way to happiness. We can work with what we do know instead of with what we don't know to create the way that we actually want to feel in this life. Have a good week.